I'll record, yeah. Okay.
It's always, I didn't forget.
Right, right. So,
Hello. So,
so I guess we will run is when there's silence, the three of us will chime in, or anybody who's who watched virtually or anything. But if you have questions, please, this is interactive.
yes, question. I'm someone that haven't went to reInvent and probably will never go physically to reInvent. I I have the question. I imagine this week where you go to Vegas and you meet a lot of people, and I understand it should be nice to get to say hi to a lot of people that you only see on the screen. But it's not very hard to try to be in hundreds of sessions at the same time and meet thousands of people. And you are limited because you only have 24 hours a day and you only have 1 week.
So the thing that I learned when I did my first reInvent way back, in the earlier days, was that anything that can be recorded, anything that's going to eventually show up on YouTube with the exception of the keynotes, I don't attend. Like anything that I can watch after the fact, unless I specifically want to talk to that product manager or the person giving the talk afterwards, I will skip that, because the most precious thing that you're going to have when you're in Vegas is time. Because from the second that your feet hit the ground in the airport, you start running into people like immediately. Like you're walking out of the concourse and somebody's like, "Oh crap, that's Emily Freeman. I got to go talk to her about whatever." And so it's literally nonstop. So the best thing that you can do for yourself is go to the Walgreens right next to the Venetian, get 4 liters of water the first second that you get there, because you're going to go through water like bananas. And water inside the hotel room is very expensive. And just start figuring out who you want to talk to, and then setting up scheduled times with those people, because there's companies that you want to talk to. There's product things that you want to get your specific questions answered with, that you're not going to get out of a session. You have to deliberately make time to do all of that. And the best way to do it is to get into a Slack channel session with them and DM them directly and say, "Okay, I'm in the expo hall in 15 minutes. Meet me down there." It's very chaotic. It's very hectic. And you can be ships passing like 10 or 20 times a day. So it's exhilarating, but it's also crazy exhausting. And especially if you're trying to get a good 7 or 8 hours of sleep too. If you
Hello.
Sorry. Oh, somebody's got a hot mic.
Hello.
Sorry.
There we go. So that's, and it also depends upon what time you fly in and what time you fly out as well. If you go in on a Saturday, then you've got a little bit of buffer time at the beginning to prep and get your head in the game and calendar yourself properly. So yeah, it's a very chaotic experience, and you're going to be walking a lot everywhere and taking taxis and lifts everywhere as well.
Right. A bunch of us were sharing our step count, and we're like, wow, I put in more steps today than I did in 2021.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it is crazy. And
It's
I mean,
So how many steps did you get anyway? I'm curious. Like 20,000, 30,000 a day?
easily.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah, easily.
Wow.
And let's see. Yeah, I agree with Chris. I don't go to sessions anymore. I'll go to Chalk Talks, because Chalk Talks are sort of informal, conversations. Because the sessions, I can watch, but I want to be able to ask questions, and it is pretty amazing to see the folks. And I was also sad, at some of the folks that I didn't get to see. But like, Chris, he and I, we're friends outside of this. And so we get together periodically, and we're overdue for that, Chris, by the way. But there's other folks that that I've chatted with for a couple of years now and have never met. And that's just amazing. I mean, one of the things that the Heroes did was we had a WhatsApp channel so we could find each other. But we were actually saying it might be interesting to have a share your location thing, so that we could find each other on the fly, or that other people could find us, because one of the things is, as Heroes, we're supposed to be available during the conference and have people can talk to us, but they have to find us first.
Yeah, Google Maps has that. It share your location and you give it amount of time. But then people get crazy because it's a link for each person. It's not an easy way where you can have a group chat,
Right.
But it's a great proposal for next reInvent.
Yeah. We've been talking. We mentioned it to Ross, and we'll mention it to a variety of people. I will say this: in years past, I've sort of gone crazy trying to plan my schedule ahead of time, and this time it's just like, see it happen, see who I run into. I mean, I actually spend a lot of time in the expo, and I'll say, I'll do a pass where I really don't talk to any of the booths. I just sort of get the lay of the land and then go back and have targeted conversations. Yeah.
How was the food?
Spectacular.
Where did you eat, Chris? Because I'll say I didn't buy a single meal, and mostly I just ate at the various parties. And the food at the parties was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, so even if you were just going and doing the conference breakfasts and lunches and everything, the food in Vegas is really good. They're used to taking care of large amounts of people and creating good fare for them. So the food was exceptional. The parties are well catered, and Vegas is renowned for having fantastic restaurants and fantastic hotels.
Any idea what attendance was this year?
24,000.
Oh, it's 24, huh? Okay.
Yeah,
That's healthy, all things considered.
It was supposed to be capped at 20, but they went over by somewhere between 24 and 27,000, but the official number is supposed to be like 24,000.
Right. I will say this, and that was a real nice change from in 2019. It was, depending on who you ask, somewhere between 65 and 75,000 spread out over 8 hotels. And that was just nuts. This was pretty much in the Venetian with a little bit in hotels on either side, but pretty much just, in the Venetian. And I'll say this reInvent felt more incremental than revolutionary. I mean, I sort of, when I was just doing my own notes, I was saying, okay, so what's an incremental change? Yep, we have more EC2 instance types, and yep, they're cool, and they've got more CPU and more memory and faster this and smaller that and so on. And then, there were lots of existing services that had, add-ons and so on, but there weren't a ton of brand new crazy stuff. I mean, there were some, but it was, when you're this big and there's already 400 services, it's hard to be revolutionary, I thought.
So what's one of the new ones, one of the new services, if you recall offhand?
EMR serverless, right? EMR serverless was one of them, which I saw, and something on do.
Right, a bunch of the analytic services got serverless options. So Redshift, EMR, Kafka, and Kinesis. Although the middle two are in preview, they all got serverless options. And
Yeah.
Arguably that's incremental, but okay. It's,
Right.
Now, did the Elastic View come into GA? The Glue Elastic View, any idea? It's like being in preview forever, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. If Michael, if you want a revolutionary thing, there was Cloud WAN.
5G.
And
The AWS 5G, I think it's revolutionary.
Yeah, revolutionary. Yeah, that is true.
sorry, did you say cloud wind?
so yeah, so David, hold on just one sec. Cloud WAN, WAN.
Oh, yeah, that was revolutionary. Yeah, that definitely is revolutionary.
So, but for a good reason and for a bad reason, it seems very likely that Cloud WAN is what caused the outage earlier this week or last week, whenever it was. But in Cloud WAN, and I think it really is going to be revolutionary, is suppose Amazon wants us to break things down by accounts, and then your VPCs and your gateways and your routes and all this kind of stuff, and you end up with this crazy spreadsheet of who can talk to who, and debugging that's a nightmare. And Cloud WAN lets you declaratively say who can talk to who, and it will create all the routes and stuff for you.
So you're just mapping IP addresses to each other, and then it dynamically routes?
I think it's actually even at a higher level than that. I think it's more like, this
DNS?
VPC in this account can talk to these VPCs in these other accounts. And
Okay.
it's, we've been an early beta user of it. It's been almost released, and it's going to be released. No, it's not. It's almost going to be released. And they released it, and then Amazon was down for 2 days. So
Yeah, but
these are-
one of the cool parts about it is that it's not just going to be VPC to VPC. It's also going to be to on-prem. So you can set up declarative policies, basically SD-WAN, that will allow it's supposed to take care of it for your network admins effectively. This can talk to that can talk to this. You set up your CIDR blocks on both sides and say go, and it's supposed to go. So I mean, it'll be great if it works, but if it doesn't work, then you could totally screw yourself.
Yeah. So what?
Are they
I
offering
imagine-
like on-prem hardware as or do you have to, are they interfacing with common on-prem hardware?
I imagine it's going to be similar to their other offerings in this space, where it's either going to be like an OVF distribution that you can lay down, or some kind of policy tie-in. I actually don't know. Brian's closer to this than I am.
Yeah. Chris is right. The notion is connect to your on-prem stuff, your existing stuff. You can get outposts, and of course now there are bigger outposts and smaller outposts, but it should be able to talk to all of them. Another newish service that I think David was starting to talk about is private 5G. Go ahead, David.
I think one thing AWS tried to do in this reInvent is to get closer to us. They have the cloud, and the cloud is far away in some place we don't know. And many announcements, many new services is trying to get to us, get closer to the edge, trying to involve us. Outpost, a lot of EKS anywhere, a lot of ways of relating our data centers or physical data centers to the cloud. And one of them is private 5G. We have been hearing about 5G for a year or 2 years, and so far it sounds like science fiction to me. It's like something that is not happening. I don't see it, at least in Mexico, it's not happening at all. So this idea that we can ship you working 5G so you can put it in your warehouse, in your factory, in your office, and bring to reality all these promises about 5G sounds great, as Brian says, is if it works.
Well, 5G in the US is pretty extensive. And for IoT, where you've got that bandwidth that allows you to transmit a whole lot more data. Of course, then you got to pay for a whole lot more storage and a lot more processing.
Right.
I think one of the cool things about the,
okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say that I think what they were offering with private 5G was the private, here you've got a couple of buildings and it's like, whoop, here's your stuff. You are absolutely contained.
Yeah, it's not
So
going
it's
to
like
be public 5G. It's private 5G for like your corporation. Like if you want your corporate network to be on there.
So you're in an effective
company.
VPC just within your corporate environment?
Oh, I wouldn't use the term
No, it's
VPC.
like a factory or a warehouse.
Yeah.
5G, I think the promise of 5G is more along those lines. Is like, if you want to stand up your own wireless network, wide area wireless network, that's what 5G does for you. That is the problem that 5G solves. As a consumer, 5G doesn't solve anything new. It's not revolutionary for the consumers, other than it's more bandwidth, but that's not really what's revolutionary about it. What it is that you can go as a business and stand up a wide area wireless network. And when I say wide area, I'm talking like, hundreds of miles.
So is that by virtue of the bandwidth, or is there some additional protocol in there that allows you to do that?
It operates in a realm that is licensable without you licensable within the different jurisdictions. So you can go and get licensing there. It uses bandwidth that you can go and get licensed for. Whereas that's the big difference is the licensing and the regulatory around it that enables that. It's not just the technology that enables it, it's the frequency that it uses, the frequencies that it uses as well. That's my understanding.
So they've blocked off a part of the spectrum for private use.
Correct. The challenge there is that the regulatory hoops to go jump through that are significant. And this is where I think Amazon they become your service partner. They have the expertise to be able to go stand that up, and you say, hey, I want it here. And they go, okay, boom, and they drop it in place for you.
And you're not paying for anything other than so you're gonna commit to a certain amount of bandwidth and a certain amount of devices, and then they take care of everything else for you. So you're not buying hardware, you're not worried about regulations or anything like that. Other than the Amazon takes care of it, and you get 5G.
I think for a lot of people to not have to deal with lawyers and regulatory issues is more than enough sell to say, okay, I'm on board.
Right. Well, that's always been
And a new
Amazon's
network department.
Yeah.
But that's always been the challenge with 5G. And part of the reason why the implementation, I think, is so slow is that you need a fairly large, sophisticated team to go and do that yourself. And the partner organizations out there that would take this on are few and far between, because you need a large, sophisticated, legal team and regulatory team to be able to go and take it on, just to turn on device one.
Right. I think that's always been one of Amazon's value proposition, is that they take care of the various certifications. I'd also want to say that, as David said, this was one of the sort of themes-ish for this reInvent was getting closer. And so one of the things that a lot of people were excited about was new local zones and sizes and availability of outposts. So if you're not familiar, and I'm not sure that I'm all that familiar, but a local zone is a even faster than a availability zone area where you can get much higher throughput in a few city blocks or something. And so they've got a bunch more of those. And just the other day they added a new region in Jakarta. So really trying to push out things closer.
So what does that mean? Is it like those thing where you were putting the wavelength, or is it something different?
I'm not entirely sure. Chris, do you know?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
can you contrast local zones with wavelength?
Oh, I have absolutely no idea. I don't care about local zones.
Okay, okay. Well, wavelength I know is equipment that you actually put in the telecom office. So so your Lambda is actually running right there in the telecom. The local zone I think is a slightly bigger than that. It doesn't run in the telecom, but it's faster than an AZ.
It's like Azure region. The Azure regions are like small regions that don't have so much redundancy. That's what local zone is.
Okay.
I'm creating this data center, but it's not a full-fledged region AWS style. It's a small one. And the advantage that gives you is you have less latency. Wavelength is, as Brian says, I want to be in the cell tower. I want to be in the cell provider. So my response time is the least possible in case your application needs it.
So this is between wavelength and the data center, like a region like US East 1 or whatever, right?
Let's imagine that AWS is trying to push things out. So they used to have these big regions that were in some place in the world. So you had to go to the cloud and come back from the cloud, and that has some latencies. So they are adding steps so you can be closer to your users. And you have the local zones that are these small regions that are in specific cities, and we can expect to have dozens of them in the future. In fact, Azure does that. Instead of building big regions, they build a lot of small ones. And then you have a wavelength that it's in the cell providers, so you have less time, and you have outposts that sit inside your data center to be closer to your users.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to just segue us just for a minute because we can go back. There's so many topics. One of the areas that was sort of either a really big deal or just smoke, depending on who you spoke to, and I think it's a really big deal, but they've added a sustainability pillar to the well-architected framework, and this was Chris's favorite.
Who's saying that it's smoke? Who is disagreeing with me? I will fight them.
Okay. Well, it was Vlad, of course. Vlad is one of our cantankerous heroes, but we love him. I'm gonna
take him to task. I'm gonna have words with him. I'm gonna wake him up.
Okay. So one of the things that they're going to offer is a carbon footprint tool, so that you can see, what's the carbon footprint of your use of the cloud. And one of the just really striking to me things that Werner said was, we try to give you the ability to run everything unbelievably fast for when you need to go unbelievably fast. But that's not always. There are times when you don't need sub-millisecond access. You might be okay with several second access. And he's saying, so use something smaller. Use a slower instance type to save you and the world a little energy. And it's like, Amazon saying go slower? What?
Well, don't they have the Graviton CPUs now that are more energy efficient?
Yes, yeah, they are. The Graviton, they've gone to Graviton 3, which is even faster and uses less energy. They also had the Trainium and the
inference, right?
They did something on the I/O thing also, right? In which they have some special ASIC chips for accelerating I/O for even the general EC2s, right?
Yeah, the Nitro Ssds.
Yeah. Right.
I never understood what that was. Did you guys figure? You guys are much smarter than me. So can you tell me if you understood why they are faster?
Well, so there's a couple of different ways that they speed up storage. Storage over the wire is inherently going to be bottlenecked by the network connectivity layer that you attach it to. So by adding a Nitro storage plane that allows you to have, in the old days, they would use jumbo frames to make the packets bigger and stuff. And so basically they're using more clever mechanisms to get that over the wire speed faster when they're not using local ephemeral. Local ephemeral is being the fastest, but they had IO1, they've got the general purpose, they've got the IO2. They came up with the IO2 Max, or I can't remember the name for it, but the IO2 super fast or whatever. Now they've come up with Nitro SSDs. I haven't done a deep dive into what the Nitro SSDs, how exactly they do it. I remember reading that they've got some kind of a shim layer, and they do fragmenting, and they split the data blocks around so that they can increase the number of pipes. And then they do Nitro offload on the tow cards to help boost it. But I haven't done a super deep dive into them. But but at the end of the day, you pick the latency type that you want, you pick the speed of data pass through that you want, and then the simple monthly calculator tells you which instance type you should use.
Right.
So Chris, this is primary storage. It's not a caching technology.
What you mean, like Redis and Memcache, or what? When you say caching, there's a couple different types.
For example,
As an intermediary storage between the
No.
primary.
This is true and proper storage that doesn't go away if you accidentally bounce it.
Okay.
This is the EBS, right? What you'll use it for EBS, right? Typically,
right.
Chris?
Yeah. One of the things.
Go ahead.
Well, one of the things that is emerging as a common theme, and they've said this for a couple of years, is that general purpose computers are dumb. They don't say it like that. They say it a lot better.
Well, the general purpose. So
Right.
they're not
right.
optimized for any one thing.
Right. So you have the trainiums that are good for ML trainium, and you have the other one that I don't remember that's really good for inference. Oh, was it Inferium?
I know.
Right.
Wasn't this announced last year?
Right. But now they're of course better and faster. And the thing with Nitro is basically they're putting in silicon specific things. So, Nitro SSDs there's a lot less, context switching. It's, it's almost closer to bare metal, IO. It's funny, at the same time, they've also added a bunch of S3 stuff. In particular, and this is the one that's sort of head scratchy for me, is Glacier now has an instant retrieval class of Glacier.
Isn't that kind of counterintuitive?
No, I think it has a use case and it's very good. That is when you make your backups and
It's right.
you have your backups of your disk, and if something happens and your infrastructure gets destroyed, you want to get that backup as soon as possible because you need to start everything again. But chances are you're never going to use that backup. If everything goes okay, that backup it's going to be destroyed in 1 year, 5 years.
Yeah. So it's a specific use case.
No, it's even audit cases, right?
But it's a great use case. It's something everybody needs to do.
Yeah, Katrina happens to never. I hope it never happens here, but if it happens,
I need to retrieve it right away.
It is your snapshot, but it's your live co-located snapshot is what it is. I mean, that this is typical backup, right? And they've done the cheap long-term, slow storage. And now what they're doing is they're adding that middle ground where you take your snapshot, right? You drop that into Glacier. That's your instant restore. And then from there, you can, through policy, you can then push that down into longer and longer your retention period and stuff like that. I mean, so they're getting closer to providing a full backup solution, but they still don't have the what I would say is the high level backup management suite. They still haven't replaced the VMs and the of the world.
Are you
Well, it's
trying to
the
imply
AWS
that
style.
AWS backup isn't everything to everyone? Yaro, I am crushed.
Right.
So
It's,
that
it's
feature,
the AWS style. They tell you the Lego pieces and you did some assembly required.
Yeah, some assembly required. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you want to try that
That's
on
an
backup?
understatement.
Right. A couple more points about the instant storage, because I'll say for my company, storage costs is a really big deal. And so there's a couple interesting things in that there's standard access, there's infrequent access, and you can intelligent tier between them. And all of those offer, single millisecond to first byte access. Glacier instant access is described as milliseconds. Now, maybe that to some people that matters, but to some it doesn't. And you can intelligent tier among all the way from IA to SA to Glacier instance. Now, the thing that isn't necessarily apparent, but it's a head scratcher, is when your storage category moves, your file doesn't move, just the metadata changes. So a file that has that's standard access, super fast,
Still sitting on the same disk.
It's still sitting on the same disk as Glacier.
it's just a protocol.
But your price will be still, when it moves from standard access to Glacier access, will you be charged Glacier access or?
So you put a file, let's suppose you intelligent tiered it. You put a file in there, it spends a month there, then it spends a month in infrequent access, and then if you ask for it, after another month, it goes to Glacier. As soon as you touch it, it comes back to standard access. So I've actually made a spreadsheet, and I'll put it online someplace of how big a file and how often you're accessing it. And there is a management cost per file that you're looking at, but it's getting really, really interesting to figure out what the best way to store stuff is.
So a few years back, this would have come in handy because one of our developers executed a shell script that included the line RM/ against our HPC and wiped out 1.5 terabytes worth of genomic data in a flash. And it took 3 weeks to restore from tape backup.
Ouch.
Yep.
Yeah.
But at least we had the tape backup. That would have been pretty messy.
Did he still have his job after that?
Actually, believe it or not, yes.
Oh, he's the director. What are you talking about?
No.
Remember,
he
we
was
are
a contractor
blameless.
in Russia, but he otherwise did very good work. So,
It happens to all of us. I did
Yeah.
once that.
well, no, I haven't done
bizarre.
that. No, it doesn't.
I did once, like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Well,
So on
is there
this-
anybody here that specifically, I mean, I want to make sure that everybody gets what they want out of this. Was there anybody that had a service that they wanted to talk about or that they were curious about that is rattling around in one of our heads?
What came up? They said some announcements on SageMaker, right? Did you guys follow it? I was not able to make out.
There
What
is a
was
very
up?
good one, the Canvas service.
What's that?
There is a new service. I think it's called
It's
SageMaker
Canvas, yeah.
Canvas.
Yeah. Well, it's really funny because there's SageMaker Canvas, and then there was also Amplify
Studio, right?
Studio and Studio Canvas. And there was a bunch of tweets flying around like, oh my God, it's the end of developers. No one's going to need developers anymore. And it's like, yeah, I wouldn't worry about that.
I have heard that the last 25 years.
Yeah. But
I'm still
it's
waiting for it.
Yeah, it's basically the idea is to make these tools more accessible to more people.
Yeah, they were saying the front end on Werner's keynote. He was saying that to marry the front end with the back end, right? So there's no communication gap for the Amplify Studio,
Amplify.
right?
Also
So you-
Amplify for web development.
Yeah, I think they're tying up with a third party, right? Figma, where you do your graphical wireframe layouts.
Yes, they're trying to make it easier for you to use the cloud. It-
There-
something I want to say and about what Chris says, sustainability, and Brian asks. I think it's very important. I think global warming is real, and I think as cloud architects, part of our job should be to take into account the footprint, the contamination, the footprint our applications has. As Brian says, AWS is giving us options, so we can be more conservative and do it. And I love that the tools that AWS is giving us, they are cheaper. They are making it easier for us to say I can use a slower instance, a better storage option, and it's not only going to be better in a sustainability way, but it's also going to be cheaper. So it's going to be easy to sell to our bosses. And the US West 2 region that they are saying it's going to be carbon neutral, I think it's a great sales point to go to your bosses and say, okay, we can have our data center here and pop out a lot of CO2 to the atmosphere, or we can go to the cloud and be carbon neutral. And I think
And
it's something
now that a lot of
important.
companies are starting to like have actual sustainability KPIs that they're
Goals.
trying to follow, I think that'll be very valuable.
So
What's going to be
Sorry.
What's going to be interesting is when the carbon footprint tool comes out. I want to see. I mean, it's still even super preview mode, but I'm hoping that what it's going to do is it's actually going to be able to like allow us to make recommendations and toggle widgets. Like, okay, you can use this instance and do it this fast, or you can use this instance like this Graviton 3 that's 65% cheaper. Yeah, it'll be a hair slower, but you'll be able to save X number of tons over the course of time. That's what I'm hoping for. But we'll see what happens when it shows up.
Right. And since it's part of the well-architected framework, it's not exactly optional, because if
Right.
you want to get the well-architected certification, you gotta address all the pillars.
Yeah,
But you can say this doesn't matter to me when you do the questionnaire. There are some questions you can say, yes, this one
David,
doesn't
you're
matter.
far enough from Chris, because otherwise he would wring your neck. We have to be careful.
I will be interested. So the next time I go in and do a war and the sustainability pillar shows up on it, I'll be curious to see how that's received by my customers. I had a chat with Corey last night, and he made a really good point. The kinds of folks that he's seeing where, you know, the bill isn't a couple of $1 million a month, they don't care. They're going to put the burden of being carbon neutral on Amazon, and he thinks that in his brain they're going to say, well, if I save $5 a month, whoop-de-doo, Amazon's not going to pat me on the back for it. The customers that I'm seeing where the bill is like, you know, 20 million a month, when you can save substantial amounts of money and also save substantial amounts of carbon towards your sustainability goals. I don't know what's going to happen yet from like a human psychology perspective, how well that's going to be received or accepted as a sixth pillar that's being given just as much importance as security and operational stability and governance now.
So we're a reasonably sized software shop with lots of products and lots of cloud products. And yesterday, our division, our group got a message from management that going forward, the software developers are basically being told that they now need to design and develop to include sustainability and
That's
footprint
awesome.
issues.
That's fantastic news.
Well, but that also then begs the question, because we're providing a product and arguably a service, software as a service. If we down tune it for sustainability, at what point does the customer get pissed off that the performance isn't quite what to expect? And of course, there's competition in the space. And if the competition can process the stuff 3 times faster or 2 times faster, because they don't give a rat's about the sustainability. So to the end user, it just looks like we've got a poorly designed and architected product.
Well,
It's
that's where
like everything.
it gets a little. You have to be a little subtle. And that there was a book recently that's talking about process automation, and it said something like, you only improve the whole process if you improve the speed of the slowest component. And I
The
think
theory
that
of constraints.
there's the reverse corollary in that, yeah, I think that there are probably a lot of steps in all of our processes that could go slower, but that's not the gating item. So the overall end-to-end wouldn't change at all.
It's
This-
when we architect stuff, we always are going to make trade-offs. You can make your process run faster, but it's going to be much expensive. So you look for a good point where it's fast enough but cheap enough. Now you have a different dimension. You want to do it with a good sustainability, and not to optimize just for sustainability, but it's a dimension you'd have to take into account.
Yeah, I would argue then that what we could do is just have different price points that say to the customer, hey, if you want the fastest, well, it's not it's the most energy wasteful, so we're going to have to charge you more for it. And if you want to be on board with us on the sustainability track, then we down tune it or we deploy it on not quite as fast instances, and we'll save you money that way.
Exactly.
I think the key here, though, is to figure out what the customer deems as fast enough.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's a realm where you play where you're so fast that the customer can't tell the difference. Right.
No, exactly.
You're below their threshold of recognition, and you want to get up to the point where they can tell the difference or just below it. And then you're playing at that, right at that hump, right, where, okay, now they start to say, no, a little bit faster makes a difference to me, or a little bit slower, I'm willing to pay, less for that because I don't care about the timeline. You need to figure out where that hump is. And I think what Amazon is suggesting is that right now the default decision is get all the way down here to the fastest, no matter what the cost is, because we think faster is better, always. And you have to think hard to get to that peak and stay balanced on that peak.
Right. It's like my phone, a lot of our phones go into low power mode once they hit 20% battery. I always set my phone to low power mode because I don't care. I much rather prefer longer battery than a tiny bit more.
Really?
Well, low power mode
Always in
today
low
is the
power
same
mode?
as speedy mode from 3 years ago. So
Right. I did. Yeah. I'm just looking at time. I did want to get back to a question that was asked before we actually started about DE&I. Someone asked if there was any discussion of that. And there was the ADP folks in their keynote talked about differential loss of jobs during pandemic by gender, and how women got hit a lot harder and haven't really recovered. And he made the astonishing statement that he said 20 years of progress in gender pay equity has been wiped out by the pandemic. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then you all may be some of the last people that I've ranted to this about, and I expect Chris to roll his eyes because he's heard me do this 800 times. But
It's fine. Say it as many times as you need.
I will. The ML keynote speaker, when he was introducing male speakers, introduced them all by first and last name, and the female speakers he introduced by first name. And that's complete bullshit. I immediately went to the DE&I folks, Amazon DE&I folks in the expo, and I said, this is bullshit. It's 2021. Get your goddamn act together. I then talked to everyone I could. I've heard back through channels that it went up the chain.
And can I ask, sorry, just for the people who are not saying, if they were introduced by their first name, what's the big deal? I'm just trying to understand.
It's
Maybe I'm ignorant on this. Maybe you can educate us.
The problem is that they are discriminating, even if you are. And I can tell you, in Mexico, we are a machista country. The word in Spanish is machista, male-centered.
Okay.
We are a
We
society.
have the same word.
Yes. And the problem is, maybe you are not trying to insult anyone. I would tell you that the AWS VP is not trying to belittle women. But sometimes we don't realize that we discriminate women by default. We don't even think about it.
It's just a
And
matter
that's
of
bad.
respect.
It's legitimate.
And be fair. If I'm going to call everyone by first name, last name, why to change it? Let's call everyone first name, last name. The problem,
in a
Ryan
professional
says, is
environment,
when you-
using first and last name is imparting legitimacy that they have arrived, that they're, it's, and then when you only use a first name, it's something you would do with a child. It's somebody who isn't as, as mature. So when you do that with a woman, you're essentially saying, oh, well, they're not mature. And it's probably not something that this person was thinking about or did consciously.
right.
Well,
But
yeah,
it's that unconscious bias that we have to drive out of our vocabulary and drive out of our habits.
And that's why.
and if you're
what Ryan says
introducing
is
someone,
good.
so I was just going to say, if you're introducing someone by full name, you are also going to introduce or include the title. So PhD or medical doctor, you'll use.
They gave us these pins that said, for our badge, said ally, and it said, I will speak up when I see micro discriminations, and hell yes. So,
And
but
that's the
anyway,
important thing that
Thank you
Ryan
for
says
educating
to-
me.
to mention
I'm
it.
thanks. Yeah, thank you. I didn't
right.
mean to.
No. And the thing is that there were other examples. I mean, a couple of the female keynote speakers got some harassment. And it's like, and Werner actually tweeted about that. And he said he was pissed. So like, someone went up to a female keynote speaker who had just published a book on microservices, and somebody tried to mansplain to her what microservices were. And it's like, dude.
Oh, snap. Somebody went up to Freeman?
Yeah. And it's like, she just wrote the book on this. Yeah, Werner was pissed, and I think that's great. So
What's the
Didn't hear
book
about
name
that.
anyway? Just out of curiosity.
It's called DevOps for Dummies by Emily Freeman.
yes.
It's really good.
It's just crazy making.
Where is it on
I mean,
Amazon?
that's
Where do
a
you get it?
classic example. I mean, you hear about this stuff where people will start quoting the literature, and then the woman has to say, "Yeah, I know it because I wrote it." I mean, you hear about that kind of. It's not the first time I've heard that kind of crap.
Yeah, but it's 2021. Enough of this crap. I'm gonna toss out a question for y'all. What do you think is the Amazon service that has the most calls per second?
Either
And if
S3
you're
or
at the keynote,
DynamoDB.
if you're at the
API,
keynote, don't shout it out.
Oh, okay. All right.
Identity and access management. I am.
No, I think it's S3 or DynamoDB. One of the two.
I'm going to go with Lambda. Actually, no, maybe it's route. Was it route? What do they call it?
53.
Oh,
Route
Route
53.
53. No, I think it's IAM.
Okay, so it was IAM. And so here's the next question. How many API calls, IAM API calls do you think are made per second?
During the outage or not?
Yeah.
I think it was
Turning
like
out
6
you're a
million.
hero.
I think it was like 6 or 7 million per second, right? That was
No,
what
I
was
think
said.
it's higher than that. Werner mentioned it right in
Okay.
the
So
keynote.
who says higher than 6 million? Okay.
You're saying 6-digit millions. That's
Okay. So anyone think lower than that? Okay. I'm going to tell you it's higher than 10 million per second.
Easily.
I was thinking
Right.
10 to the power 9. So
500 million calls per second.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes, and you don't want that to have latency. You don't want to have problems. If not, we have the mess we had last week.
That's why they have to mathematically verify that, right? Before they make any change. They prove that thing for the network protocols. I think there was a keynote, a talk on that, right?
Yep.
Werner will talk
well,
about it.
I mean, every single other API call depends on it. So every time you make any other API call, it's calling IAM at least once.
Right.
No, more
If
than
not.
once, right? Every call is pretty much going through that, right?
Well, that's why I say at least once, if not multiple times.
Right. So they went into detail of exactly how they managed to speed that up. Okay, just another couple of quick topics, and unless anyone else wants to jump in with the topic, but they introduced SDKs for Swift, Kotlin, and Rust. Any thoughts about that?
I think it's a great thing they done.
The more, the merrier.
Well, it's interesting. So we had a conversation about this in the instant reaction to Werner's talk. And I've worked at companies where they've said any developer can write any component in whatever language they want. And there, yeah, Ro, I'm with you there, because what that meant is that, you know, if I picked Prolog and I'm the only one who knows Prolog, well, you know, there you go. Now
we have to defend our work somehow.
Right. But an interesting, I thought, advantage of language heterogeneity is that it forces message-driven design.
Oh.
Because
I'm waiting when Amazon takes the open source version of the Oracle project Graal VM, where you can take Node, Python, Ruby, and it converts it into a C or Java and compiles into a native executable.
Well, it's funny. Along those lines, one of the other announcements that they made was some mainframe migration tools, and
to Java.
They offered a tool that converts COBOL to Java, and I responded by saying, "It's unclear to me if that's an improvement."
You don't like Java?
Well, you move forward in the design, you know, in the design history by about 50 years, but you're still 50 years behind.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Can you imagine having all those trying to move the JCL language jobs and the, you know, stuff from COBOL to Java? Impossible. And the copy pages.
Right.
I have to tell you, I was involved in a project for the 2YK bug to convert COBOL to Java in those years, because it's going, everybody was going to explode.
So this, Brian, you're touching on a question that has been mulling around in my head. So AWS is so big and they have so many services and there's so much nuance to it. At some point, adding more capability actually becomes an impediment in and of itself. So I was curious if they talked at all about sometimes doing better with fewer pieces, moving pieces, and making them a little bit more, working on elegance rather than, I don't need 900 million Lego pieces. I need 5 that work well.
Right.
You know?
Well, Werner actually addressed that, and he said, "It's your fault." He said, "You developers
legit did. Part of the issue."
Right. And here's the thing, Yarrow, I totally get your point. One of the things that struck me is they now have to redo versions of their documentation for all of this. So every API call that has currently, a Node and a Python and a Java version in the documentation has to have 3 more versions. And I got talking to one of the guys who did the CDK book, and they actually have, they've written all their code examples for the book in some common language, or they have some tool that translates all their examples to as many different languages as you want. And when you buy the book, the electronic version of the book, of course, you get the code samples in all of the languages they support. And people are going to have to do that.
CDK has that part. CDK, it's only one code base, and you can export it to different languages.
That sounds like the Star Trek Universal Translator.
Something like that.
Can I ask a layman question? My understanding is CDK basically is a souped up translator, right? Which converts it into a CloudFormation script and ultimately becomes a CloudFormation stack. Am I missing something, or?
You're missing something. CDK lets you create the big important thing. It lets you do modules. They call it constructs. Okay. But it's programming. You do the module, you have this routine that you're going to use in thousands of places, and it's the same routine. You create this module and this construct, and you're going to use it in a lot of places. And at the end, it's going to create a CloudFormation script, but sounds like crazy. You do 50 lines in CDK and run it, and you create a script of 1,000 lines of CloudFormation. And you have the advantage of syntax checking, linters, testing, which CloudFormation is harder to use.
Maybe you should do a talk for us on the CloudForm on CDK.
I think we have.
You have, I have, not here, but I did one.
Do you have a recording? Can you post it in Slack?
I know we have a recording. We actually have the YouTube channel. Can you post the YouTube channel?
Oh, okay. I'll check in the YouTube. I have access to your YouTube channel. Not an issue.
I think we had Matthew Bonnig, didn't we? Or
yeah,
that was a different group. Yeah.
We had a really good talk on it in the CDK hub, or I think can't remember what it's called, but it's on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, and Matthew's actually the co-author of the CDK book. Speaking of the person who wrote the book on it, he literally did it, and he did speak here.
Right, and so I'll say that, and it's at 7 o'clock. I'm going to segue a little bit. So I should have mentioned this is our last meeting this year. The executive team is going to take a little break. We're going to take a shower, and we'll come back in January. And we have a bunch of as always, we're open to your ideas, but a couple of things we're going to try is a couple of panel discussions or cage matches. So we're trying to set up a cage match between CloudFormation, Terraform, and CDK. No holds barred. Texas Hold'em rules, and we're thinking of doing another cage match between the various databases. Because we've got a couple of people who think, oh, should all be Postgres.
It's total BS.
Right. So we're going to do those a couple of those things. So let us know what you want, and in particular, it'd be great if people would chime in either here or in the general channel. Our technical presentations, too high level, too deep dive, just right. Tell us, the more, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out what talks y'all want. And so the more you tell us, the more we can tailor it to what we need.
You know what you're looking for, we'll go ask the right person.
I think I know what I'm looking for, right? We have like 900 plus services on AWS. I know Brian is quite an expert in Alexa. What I would like to say is, hey, I'm looking for storage and these things. What do I need to do? Give me boilerplate code.
Okay. Interesting. We have to figure out how we'd want to do that. I mean, I do think, I mean, to that end, it might be interesting to give people a chance to say, take 5 minutes at the start of the meeting and say, here's a problem I'm working on, you know, and ask some questions, and then maybe we revisit it later on, or maybe somebody here could address it. Because Alex, that's, you know, a deep dive on sustainability would be cool. I mean, I will say years ago, I was in an architectural kata user group where every week someone brought in a design problem and everybody went off and took 15 minutes to come up with a design. And then we talked about it. So there's stuff like that. So please be as vocal as you can in our Slack things and in the feedback survey, because we can do whatever. This is our group.
Awesome.
So I think, unless there are further questions, I'm going to call that a wrap. This has been
Just one last question, Brian. For next year, I mean, like used to have that community event, right, in October pre-COVID. Are you planning to bring that back, or you're done with that?
It's hard to tell. So, you know, I think our first one would have to probably be outdoors. That probably means April at the earliest. I think we're going to go through, you know, we used to talk about internet time, and, you know, 3 months was 2 internet generations. Well, right now, you know, between now and April, there'll be 4 new COVID variants, I'm sure. And you know, we'll have lockdowns and unlockdowns and so on. So we're absolutely going to keep an eye on it, because you know, those of us who went to reInvent, we just had such a freaking blast seeing each other. But we have to do it. We have to do it safely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So it's been a great year. We've had a lot of meetings. I will say our meetup is well respected. I mean, when we you know, so you all should feel proud of yourself, because when we're at reInvent, people are like, oh yeah, Boston, I've heard about you guys. So
Well, we got David all the way from Mexico.
oh yeah,
And now people from India too.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's great. You know,
David, I'm not from India. I'm near Boston, just for you. If you're thinking.
No.
Vivek.
At the
Vivek was
start,
from India.
yes.
right. And we continue to love lightning talks. If you have, you know, a small topic, you know, if you want to even just talk about your journey, if you can say, wow, I'm brand new to the cloud and I don't get it. That's a great lightning talk, you know, and we can help out, because this is, so we've always been about give back, but and inclusion. But 2022, we're going to take that to the next level. Inclusion and give back is what we're going to be all about. So I'm going to ask everyone to think about that. You know, it's funny, when I gave a talk at the user group leaders section of reInvent, and I was talking about, you know, that you know, we're getting some sponsorship now, but for the last, you know, 2 years, I've paid all the costs of this group out of pocket. And I said in my talk, I'm in a position to do that, but lots of people aren't. And so we have some privilege, or I'll speak for myself. I feel very, very privileged, and I want to give back. And so I'd encourage anyone else who wants to come along. But it's a community group, so do what you want to do.
That's really cool, Brian. One of the people who joined us, I invited him because he's like a machine learning hero. And I thought maybe, you know, in February, you know, March, whatever, we can invite him to talk.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think this aligns up with this give back thing, because what I heard, like, I don't have too much information on this, but Amazon sees machine learning and AI as necessary skills. Like they want to upskill, they even have a target number, something like 25 million people, like globally. And like, so I'm saying like, that's like the momentum of like give back. You know, sometimes it's just like educating people on cool stuff that's really modern, like AI.
Yep, we're all about that, and I'm well, I'll go into philosophy if I keep talking, so I'm going to stop. So okay, so I'm gonna pull the ripcord. Have a great holidays, whatever that means to y'all, and stay
Thank
safe.
you, Brian,
We'll
for
see you.
arranging this.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Good to see everyone.
Happy holidays, everyone.
you.
Happy New
Bye.
Year.
Feliz Navidad.
Happy New Year. Bye.
All right, cheers.
Bye.